I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Of the Governor and Executive Council officially to order, and begin by asking for a motion to approve the meeting minutes of September 23rd, 2020.
Second.
So we have a motion and a second. Are there any discussion or requests for changes to the meeting minutes? Okay. Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And Councilor Belinsky?
Aye.
With that, any against? With that, the motion carries and the meeting minutes are approved. Next, from the Office of the Secretary of State, we have our civil commissions. Could I please have a motion to confirm the list of civil commissions?
So moved. Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor of the list of civil commissions as presented, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Councilor Belinsky?
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none opposed, the list of civil commissions is approved. Are there any changes or nominations to put onto the list of civil commissions? Okay. Seeing none, the matter of civil commissions is concluded. We have one resignation to vote on today. From the Compensation Appeals Board, could I please have a motion to accept the resignation of Joseph Dickinson of Concord?
Councilor Belinsky, so moved.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on Mr. Dickinson? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And Councilor Belinsky?
Aye.
Noting that the resignation is accepted, and that concludes our resignations for today. Moving on to our list of confirmations, could I please have a motion to confirm Lori Bottolato of Portsmouth to the Aviation Users Advisory Board?
So moved. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And Councilor Belinsky?
Aye.
Noting the aye, Lori Bottolato is confirmed. Could I please have a motion to confirm Stephanie Mills of Concord to the Board of Chiropractic Examiners?
Councilor Belinsky, so moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Councilor Belinsky?
Aye.
Noting the aye, Stephanie Mills is confirmed. Could I please have a motion to confirm Brian Abbott Jr. of Keene to the Community College System of New Hampshire Board of Trustees?
Councilor Belinsky, so moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on Mr. Abbott? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Councilor Belinsky?
Aye.
Thank you very much. Mr. Abbott is confirmed. Could I please have a motion to confirm Jared Moreo of Meredith to the Lakes Management Advisory Committee?
So moved. Seconded.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And Councilor Belinsky?
Aye.
Noting that, Jared is confirmed. Could I please have a motion to confirm Paul Lipnick of Nashua to the New Hampshire Real Estate Commission?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And Councilor Belinsky?
Aye.
Thank you very much. In order that Mr. Lipnick is confirmed, could I please have a motion to confirm Carol Granfield of Meredith to the Public Employee Labor Relations Board?
So moved. Seconded.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And Councilor Belinsky?
Aye.
Thank you very much. Ms. Granfield is confirmed. And can I please have a motion to confirm Ryan Cluthier of Hooksett to the Residential Ratepayers Advisory Board?
So moved. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And Councilor Valinsky.
Aye.
Thank you very much. And with that, Mr. Cloutier is confirmed. And that concludes the confirmations for today's meeting. Moving on, I do have a few nominations to read into the public record. To the Advisory Board on Private Investigative Agencies, Bail Recovery Agents, and Security Services, I nominate Eric Roberts of Amherst and Edward Peddleford of Pittsfield. To the Board of Licensing for Alcohol and Other Drug Use Professionals, I nominate Angela Whiting of Northampton. To the Connecticut Lakes Headwater Citizens Committee, I nominate Harry Brown of Stewartstown. To the Council for Responsible Gambling, I nominate Maura McCann of Concord. To the New Hampshire Housing Finance Authority, I nominate Anthony Ford of Concord and Christopher Norwood of Bedford. To the New Motor Vehicle Arbitration Board, I nominate Nancy O'Brien of Stratham. To the Residential Ratepayer Advisory Board, I nominate Matt Pafori of Manchester and Dana Newt of Sanborn. And to the State Veterans Council, I nominate Brandon Finn of Newfields. And that concludes the list of nominations for today's meeting. Moving on, I'd ask for a motion to adopt our consent calendar agenda.
So moved. Second.
We have a motion and a second on the consent calendar. Is there any request for discussion on any of the consent calendar agenda items or a request to remove any of the items for further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify, all in favor of accepting the consent calendar as presented signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And Councilor Valinsky?
Aye.
Thank you very much. And with that, the consent calendar is approved as submitted. Moving on to the regular agenda, I'd ask for a motion to adopt agenda items 6 and 7 from the Department of Health and Human Services from the Office of the Commissioner.
So moved. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on either of these items, 6 or 7? Bear with us one moment. Any discussion on 6 or 7? Okay, seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
That's one.
Aye.
Thank you. Sorry. Any opposed? And Councilor Valinsky?
Aye.
Thank you very much. And items 6 and 7 are approved. I now ask for motion to adopt agenda items 8 through 12A from the Department of Health and Human Services from the Division of Public Health Services.
So moved. Seconded.
So we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Okay, seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any
Governor,
opposed? Oh, I'm sorry.
I had a question.
Oh, sure. I'm sorry, Councilor. Thank you very much. Go right ahead. I think we do have the Commissioner. Commissioner Shivanet is joining us. We'll get it. Number 12.
Good morning, Commissioner Shipanek, for the record.
Can you hear the Commissioner, Councilor?
It's a little hard.
How is this? Is this better?
The microphone system in the room isn't working, so I don't know if, yeah, thank you.
Oh.
We have to bring in a backup.
Oh, okay. One moment, Commissioner. Councilor.
How is this?
Yeah, that's it.
Great.
Great. My question's on 12A, the SLRP loans. This award is for just under $800,000. I seem to remember in the budget process a multi-million-dollar appropriation for this. So my question is, are there more loan forgiveness program items coming? Is this the full allotment being spent? is there a waiting list of eligible professionals who would otherwise get this loan repayment benefit?
Thank you for that. So we did a large group of them earlier in the year, and this is another group that is funded through another means than the general funds that I think you're referring to that were in the budget. So we did do some earlier. We're still evaluating how much we're going to give out of the general fund bucket coming through the end of this year, depending on what our budget numbers look like. So we are still accepting applications for that, and we should probably have more information on that in the coming months.
Just to follow up, just so I understand, if the full legislative appropriation was paid out through this repayment program, how much additional money would there be available?
I'm going to ask Lisa Morris to come up as she oversees that program and she has that level of detail.
Thank you.
Good morning. Lisa Morris. Can you hear me through my mask, Counselor?
I missed what you said.
Oh, can you hear her okay?
Can you hear me okay? How's that?
It's a little garbled.
Okay. I'll try now. That sounds better. So, relative to your question, Lisa Morris, Director of the Division of Public Health Services, the existing contracts with our SLRP candidates have all been met. We have not spent the entire allotment of general funds. As the Commissioner said, we're evaluating the general fund usage, the remaining general fund usage. I do not believe there's anybody currently on the waiting list, which is good news. But I know that we're not currently going out and asking for additional referrals until we have a better sense on the general fund usage. But all current contracts are being met.
So how much of the general fund appropriation is not being used right now?
So I don't have that information for you, but I can get that for you.
Yes, please. Just email me. I'm sure the other counselors would like to know. And is there some process that is underway to determine how much additional funding will go through the SLRP program? And would you tell us about that process?
Hi, it's Commissioner Shivanet again. So right now, we're not actively recruiting candidates until we have a better handle on our spend for this budget year and what our projections are going to be like for the rest of the budget year. As we all know, the COVID pandemic really, changed the way we were spending funds and what we were spending funds on. So we really need to get a better handle on that before we go out and start actively recruiting. So over the next couple of months, we will know not just if we can, but how many we can, right? It's not just about whether if we can, because I think, based on the contract here today, we're meeting the need of the state and the fact that we don't have anybody on our wait list. So once we understand how much we do have to spend, then we will go out and start actively recruiting.
Okay, I understand what you're saying. I've met with professionals who are eligible, who are getting the message that it's not worth their time to apply because the money won't be forthcoming. And they're looking to other states that have active loan repayment programs and are leaving. This is particularly acute in the mental health field. And I just, let me make a point. You don't have to respond. This is a legislative appropriation. The governor signed off on it. It would be helpful for this process to be transparent, where you're varying from the existing budget. And I'm looking for some transparency. But thank you for the information. I'll look forward to hearing how much money is being held back from Ms. Morris. Thank you.
Further discussion? Yes, Councilor.
Very. I've done this before, Lori. Just a general question. With everything going on in your world with the pandemic, and as we sort of start to work our way through the fall and head towards the winter, and we do hear occasionally little spikes here and there. So could you just give us, in your view, some general updates of what we should be conscious of as councilors with each of our districts, and what you might see as potential issues going forward?
So, thank you for that question, which is just basically a general update on where we are with COVID-19. So I think it's no secret that over the last couple of weeks, we've seen our numbers start to tick up, not unexpected. We've been talking about this now for several months, that with schools coming back, colleges and universities coming back, and people generally going out, and it's not just the schools coming back, right? It's the after-school activities, and it's the sports teams and things like that, that we are going to see increasing rates of community transmission, and we are seeing some evidence of that now. So not unexpected, but we're watching it very closely. You know, most recent developments, I think, is that we, number one, added in the antigen tests into our case numbers. Prior to September, they weren't really big numbers. There was a handful of them between March and September because we didn't have a lot of access to rapid testing, and when we did, we confirmed those cases with PCR tests. So they were, you know, there were not a lot of antigen-only tests. Now, with the procurement of some Quidel's and some of our community partners getting Quidel's, all of our nursing homes getting rapid antigen tests of some kind, our case numbers with antigen-only tests started to tick up in September, so it felt like it was really a good time to fold those into our overall numbers. So we're seeing more of those rapid tests, and so the state is designated by the federal government to get about 400,000 of the Binax Now cards, which are our one-time use antigen rapid tests. We got our first shipment yesterday, so we will be planning distribution at the end of this week and into early next week. We'll be starting with our community testing centers, which is where we will be directing people, let's say a student in a school that becomes symptomatic and needs a rapid test. There's community testing centers all over the state. Those types of tests should be used for symptomatic people only. So this is not something that is a surveillance-based test. This is, I'm having symptoms and I need to get tested. Now, there is some variation in that for the nursing homes that have the test, but for our community-based testing, it's going to be that. Because of that, we're going to expect to see, for just antigen-based tests, probably a slightly higher positivity rate because you're only testing symptomatic patients. But really, we're holding steady with a somewhat of an increase, but not unexpected at all. Based on the amount of mobility in our communities right now, people getting back to work, people getting back to school, we expect to see the increases that we're seeing right now.
And with winter coming, flu season, I mean, you talk to people occasionally, they'll say, geez, I get up in the morning, I don't feel 100%. The first thing that goes through my mind now is, do I have COVID? And, you know, obviously before people would say, geez, I'm just not feeling great today, and they move on. Do you feel with all these rapid tests, they'll be able to identify? I guess the question is, because some of those, they say there's like false positives.
Yes.
Is there a high percentage of that, or is that?
We're actually pulling out our false positive numbers, but it's a really difficult thing to ascertain whether something's a false positive or not. Because if you have a positive antigen test, and then 3 or 4 days later you take a PCR test and it's negative, we don't know if that was a swabbing technique. We don't know if you were coming on the end of your illness and and now you're negative. So it's really difficult to tell. We have had some false positives in the state that we have confirmed on the same day with a PCR test. But, you know, my overall messaging around your question is you should have a very low threshold for staying home when you're not feeling well. That is what we've been saying from the beginning. If you get up and you feel unwell, that should be a low threshold. And with flu season coming on, you know, we don't want people spreading the flu either. So that's going to work both ways for both COVID and flu. I think across the board, our messaging has been is that everybody should get a flu shot because the influenza can also overwhelm our healthcare system, and when you put that in with COVID, the potential is there. So we want everybody to get a flu shot and have a very low threshold of staying home when you're not feeling well.
Sort of anticipated part of my question. There's going to be something to say, I was going to get my flu shot, but is it too early to get a flu shot?
No, it is not too early. We look at October, November are your typical times that you would be getting flu shots right now.
Okay,
Everybody should get a flu shot.
Counselor?
Thank you, Governor. Child abuse. Now that school's back in session, are we getting any more calls at the department because I'm hearing awful things from the agencies?
Have we been hearing awful things?
No, I said, have you been getting any more calls? When school was out, you said your calls went down. Now that school's back in, have they been identifying child abuse in the schools?
I can get you the numbers on our month-over-month intakes for DCYF. I would say that with schools being back in only a month, it's probably a little early, but I can have DCYF break down our numbers month by month for you.
Is there any way that we can go back and check on the ones that were being notified to the state before COVID, and have they been checked to see if they're okay? In other words, what I'm saying is if there was a report of a child, let's say in January, to your department, and COVID came in and schools went out, nothing happened, is there any way we can go back and check those old ones?
So those, even through COVID, if there was any credibility to the complaint that was lodged and abuse or neglect was founded, we would have continued to follow that child for a very long period of time. We don't go in and do a case investigation, have a finding, and come out. We are usually in there for a very lengthy period of time. And even for those that we don't have a finding on, we often will stay in to do parenting training and things like that with the parents and the child. So it's not very often that there is even a concern that we come out immediately. So for those cases that you're talking about, if there was a concern about the child's well-being, we would have stayed involved with that family.
Well, I'm very concerned with the children. And my understanding is that you're not getting as many calls as you were prior to COVID.
I'm sure that is correct.
And that really, really concerns me because you've got people that are home, that are drinking, that are doing drugs, and you still have those poor children in that atmosphere.
Yes. And we've done a variety of programs throughout COVID to try to draw attention to neighbors checking neighbors and people in the communities and with our physicians and all of our community organizations to say, because some of our very frequent and common reporters for child abuse and neglect comes from the schools, to keep our eyes on our neighborhood. And we've been doing that throughout COVID. I think it's without a doubt that our numbers of reported cases went down while school was out, but we did make those efforts to reach those kids through other means. But I can get you the month-over-month numbers.
And last year in September and October versus this year, September and October.
Okay.
Thank you.
Councilor Prescott?
All right. Thank you, Governor. I know that there are a lot of sports programs, whether it's in high school, elementary school, or after that, doing a lot of tests, weekly, daily, I'm not positive. Is there a recommendation that you give that says which type of test they should use?
If it's asymptomatic testing, meaning the patient has no symptoms at all, they should be doing a PCR test.
Okay. And if they have symptomatic?
If they have symptomatic, they can use a rapid test, which is available, will be available at our community testing sites. Right now, they're available at a variety of our partner sites, like Choice MD, Convenient MD, those types of facilities have rapid tests, and a lot of the hospitals do. So they can do a rapid test or a PCR test. Our average turnaround time right now for a PCR test is about 2 days, so it's not an extended period of time. The PCR test is more accurate. It is a more sensitive test, so it really depends on what, how quickly you need the results back. If you've had a lot of close contacts and you've been in a crowd of people, not wearing masks, on social distancing, you should probably get a rapid test because time is of the essence. But if you're symptomatic, either the rapid antigen test or the PCR test will work.
So I've heard of the sports programs for asymptomatic players having the antigen test used, and then once they get a positive of the antigen test, then they go to the PCR. So you would agree that that's not the right method? You recommend different?
I would say that it's not ideal. I think that there are a variety of people, providers, and even long-term care have been directed by our federal partners to use the antigen test even on asymptomatic people. So my recommendation is in an ideal situation, you would use a PCR test for asymptomatic testing, and you would use your antigen test for symptomatic patients.
And how are people supposed to get that information? Just by making sure they pay attention to your press releases and your opportunity to speak to the news networks?
Yeah, and all of this information is on our website. We talk about it pretty much weekly in our press conferences, and any healthcare practitioner would also give you the direction that you need if you presented at a community test site or at your family. Your primary care physician would be able to give you the direction that you need on what type of test is most appropriate for your situation. A lot of times, it is really dependent on timing and how quickly you need those results.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Governor.
Thank you. Any further questions for the Commissioner? Okay, thank you very much. Well, hearing no further questions, all in favor of items 8 through 12A, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Councilor Linsky?
Aye.
And with that, the items are approved. I now ask for a motion to adopt agenda items 12B and C from the Department of Health and Human Services from the Division of Long-Term Support and Services.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And Councilor Valinsky?
Aye.
And with that, the items are approved. That concludes our items for the Department of Health and Human Services. Moving on, we'd ask for a motion to adopt agenda items 13 through 22 from the Department of Transportation.
So moved.
Second. So a motion and second. Any discussion on any of these items? Morning, Councilor. How are you?
Well, how are you?
Good. The Commissioner is joining us today. Okay, Councilor Pignatelli.
Thank you, Commissioner. So this is more of a comment than a question, but it's on item 22. So you can't see me under my mask, but I have a huge smile on my face. This process began for me in 2004 when I was first elected to the council, and I looked at Merrimack and the unfairness, what I saw of the toll booths in Merrimack at 3 exits, 6 toll booths. So I have spent the last 16 years trying to find one way or another to zero out these tolls, especially at exit 11, but exit 12, and knowing that exit 10 was a bit of more of a challenge. So today, I get to cross off a huge item on my bucket list that has been there for 16 years. So I thank the Department of Transportation for all of your support. I thank the other councilors for voting last November to zero out the tolls. And I thank especially Shannon Chanley and the Merrimack Water Warriors who have supported me over many, many years to see this come to fruition. So thank you, everyone.
Further discussion? Councilor Grimes.
On the sharing between Vermont and New Hampshire, is that standard, or is it different percentages? Because this one seems to be, I thought high, 67, 33. Because I heard sometimes it can get as low as almost just a little over 10%.
So, good morning. For the record, Victoria Sheehan, Commissioner for DOT. There's actually 2 items on today's agenda. One is on the consent calendar, and then the item that you're referring to on the main agenda concerning agreements between New Hampshire and Vermont. For each of our bridge crossings, the state line is established at the mean high water mark, and so it really depends on the geography of the land as to where the state line is, and therefore what percentage each state pays respectively. So it can be as high as 91, 95% of some occasions. For the example that you speak before you today, a lower percentage actually.
Further discussion? Councilor Duquette.
Just a general discussion, and for the record, there was a non-meeting meeting before this meeting regarding exit 4A. I did not participate because I don't want to be left not able to ask questions, as I was once informed when there was another project before us, that I couldn't ask questions about what we learned in non-public. So with that, I'll open up with some questions on exit 4A, because there's an awful lot of people that have a lot of interest in this project. And I know that there was overdue, but I think that if you take a look at the public documents that I have, it shows that there was no mention of additional projects in regards to sound walls. It came out in 93. So there's $4.8 million that were supposed to be paid for in the I-93 project, but it was tacked on to the 4A project. So those are some of the questions, and I would hope that we're going to move forward in a different direction to get this project done. Because my understanding is there's a need. And there are companies that are looking to move in, but don't trust us, because the 4A project is again delayed. So I'm looking for an answer to say, yes, you will have something before this council in the next 2 months so that we can get this project done.
So if I may, for the record, I'll explain the process that the department has been following since we opened the bid proposal. I am limited in what I can say because the RSA is clear. When we don't move forward with an RFP to contract award, we can only share very, very high-level information. Because we are trying to find the appropriate path forward to make sure that we can complete this project. And we do not want to do anything that would impact the integrity of the bid process. So we opened the bid proposals after having scored a technical proposal as part of this design-build procurement. Unfortunately, the apparent winning bid was $30 million higher than what we had estimated in the most recent 10-year plan. So I know, Councillor Gatsis, you had some questions about how the estimate evolved as we advanced the preliminary engineering. And certainly, at different times, there were increases in our budget. Even most recently, during the last 10-year plan update, we did increase the budget for this project significantly. But despite the fact that we had modified the scope and increased the funding, when the bids were opened, they were still much higher than what we had available in our 10-year plan. And that's why we weren't able to move forward with the contract immediately, because obviously if we were to allocate an additional $30 million to this project, it would impact other projects in the 10-year plan. So what I committed to at the last GNC meeting was meeting with each of the teams. I mentioned that they weren't obliged to meet with us, but all teams were willing to come forward. So we're learning more about the discrepancies between our estimates and their bids, and understanding more about the cost increases. Because of the RSA and the need to preserve the integrity of the process, I really can't say anything more than that. Based on the information that we received, and we just concluded the meeting, we had the last meeting this morning, right before I came over for the non-meeting. And we're going to take a closer look and try to determine what the best path forward is. I cannot commit to bringing a contract before you in the next 2 months. I don't think that's realistic, but we are doing everything that we can to look at the variance in the cost, and what was associated with transferring risk to a design team, and how can we mitigate some of those risks and complete the work potentially ourselves, or do more analysis to help provide information to inform the bidding process. So we're looking at a lot of different options, and certainly once we have decided what the most appropriate procurement method would be and how to move this project forward, we'll be sharing that information with the 3 teams that were involved, as well as be able to brief the councillors and talk directly with the 2 communities that are impacted, both Londonderry and Derry. But we really need some more time. Actually, we just concluded the debrief meetings. We have learned a lot through this conversation, and we really appreciate the contracting team being willing to meet with us and share some of the information. But we now need to digest that and establish the best path forward.
Is there any way that this project can be done in phases?
So again, I'm somewhat limited in what I can say because of the procurement regulation. That was part of the purpose of the non-meeting this morning, was just to talk legally about what our options are and seek guidance from council.
Well, I'm glad I wasn't in that meeting, so I could ask you that question.
And so, unfortunately, I can't talk about all of that publicly. We are working very closely with the Attorney General's office to understand where we have opportunities to leverage the work that's been completed up to this point, and where we have limitations.
Well, as I said, I just hope that, Governor, you're getting involved to make sure this can happen sooner than later. Because if something doesn't come before us in the next few months, the spring construction season will have started and we'll have nothing. So I think that there's a lot of opportunities that we can do this, just in different ways. I-93 took, when I started in 2000 as a state senator, that project was going to cost $195 million. Can you tell me what the completion price was?
We're completing that work now. It's a little under $800 million.
So that's a pretty big number. So I hope that 4A doesn't go from 50 million to 400 million. Because I don't know where the money's going to come from at that point.
Well, that's exactly why we paused. We're reevaluating the scope, the procurement method, all those different aspects to try and establish what is a reasonable price for this particular project.
And I have a concern with the companies that bid, because they've been waiting an awful long time for this project, which means they're going to have to lay people off if it goes by the construction season of the spring. And then you've got the developers who have folks waiting to move in, and again, they've been hoodwinked. hope that 2 months gives you the time to come back before this council.
Certainly, we'll have
Governor,
identified...
can I get your
path forward.
commitment that something will come before us?
Well,
I know you promised that we would have this meeting.
Yeah, I can't promise that it's going to be done in 2 months, but I think the commitment is where my office continues to work with DOT. Again, I have to vote on contracts as well, so I can't be purview to all the details, to find every opportunity to actually have it happen. And again, the other folks that keep in mind with Derry and Londonderry, those towns have made huge commitments and are expecting us to follow through on those obligations as well. And, I think everyone understands that in talking to those towns, $30 million over budget, well, that's 50%. That's obviously the warning sign to take a step back and try to your point, Councilor, we just got to get it done a different way. And then there may be a lot of opportunities to do that, whether it's in phasing or rebidding or whatever it might be. And there's lots of options I know that DOT is exploring. But time is of the essence.
Well, the sound walls from 93 is $5.8 million. That's 5% of the overage. So why we would have tacked in the sound walls from 93 onto this project is beyond me.
There were sound walls that were going to be constructed as part of I-93 that would have been impacted and would have been removed as part of 4A. It didn't seem prudent or efficient. And so we did add the budget to reflect incorporating that work. But we added to the budget to reflect incorporating that work. So that's not, to our knowledge, one of the issues where the contractors perceive a different scope of work to what we
If I think $5.8 million, I know in most of our lives that's more than a cup of coffee. Thank you, Governor.
Thank you. Councilor Prescott, did you have some further questions?
Yes, thank you, Governor. Commissioner Sheehan, do you agree with me that the most important part of what you're doing now is to be certain that you maintain the integrity of the bid process and not have one of the bidders object and then we're back to ground zero again? And can you give me that assurance that that's how you're going to proceed, even under the pressures of wanting to get this done, as I have? Since 1998, I've been talking about Nexus 4A.
It has always been our goal to advance this project as quickly as possible. So as we have these conversations with each of the teams, we are not disclosing anything about their competitors' bids. We are always having discussions with respect to our estimate, our schedule, what they submitted as a bid to preserve the integrity of the process. There's a lot of capability tied up in this procurement between the various design teams, the various contracting teams, and so we are trying to make sure that we don't share any information with respect to the individual bids. The contractor does not see that information, and that's why we're being very careful in what we share publicly, because we are going to try and bring a contract before the council as quickly as possible to advance this work. I don't think, being realistic, we can do that within a couple of months. But I do know that we'll have a path forward identified in the next 30 to 45 days and be able to provide the public, to communities and the council with a timeline for our revised approach in terms of delivery of this project.
Could you also express my happiness with the bidders that are volunteering and trying to work through this process? And I know that they're only doing that because it is a level playing field. They have the same opportunities as other bidders to, come up with a solution and have the same opportunity to win that bid. Otherwise, there will be a protest. So the fine line is no protest, but moving forward. And otherwise, we're back to ground zero and lost another year of construction season.
And this is why we're working very closely with the Attorney General's office to make sure that reviewing our existing RFP documentation and what the stipulations were, making sure that we have chosen the appropriate path forward to make sure we have competitive bids and high level of interest so we get good pricing moving forward.
Thank you for that, everybody working together. Thank you, Governor.
Councilor Cronin.
Commissioner, the design build, do we have the capabilities internally to come up with a bidding process that sort of helps. I mean, obviously, we bid at 60 million, and someone was successful much higher than that. So do we have that, or do we have to look at how we do things, or maybe this is not a program we should be doing? It's sort of general questions.
So we selected the design-build procurement method for this project because there was a lot of advocacy for Exit 4A, and we were trying to deliver this project as quickly as possible. Many times you use design-build because it allows you to accelerate the overall project completion. By starting construction while you continue to advance the right-of-way acquisition and finalize the design for certain aspects of the work. We still believe that design-build is a good procurement solution. We've learned a lot in talking with the team about why there was a discrepancy between our estimate and their bid. I really can't say any more than that to explain whether or not design-build was the right solution for this project or how we would move forward. That's all the analysis that we're doing now, and we'll be able to explain our path forward, but we're very limited in what we can say with respect to how we structured this particular procurement.
And sort of a general question. We hear a lot of people moving to New Hampshire. I'm assuming some might be engineers looking for a job. Are we competitive in what we pay to attract younger people to fill positions? I mean, I know a number of them, people at the top of the department are
So you're
people
talking
look
about
like me. I'm just starting to think that maybe are we taking advantage of some of those opportunities to attract younger people, or even people not even young right out of school, but in the process of maybe relocating, to think this is a competitive job that they can make a decent living and work for the state.
So every year we have a very robust internship program at the DOT. In many years, interns come back more than once a season to work with us. We have had good success with hiring from that intern population. We also work really closely with UNH and with other colleges to recruit entry-level engineers. I think there's no better place to learn the transportation sector than working for a DOT. And even if those individuals pursue other opportunities, the department will be successful if there's talent across our industry and working for the private sector as well as for us. So we work closely even with the consulting and the contracting team to try to attract talent into the field of engineering and transportation in particular.
Thank you.
Does that mean they have a sharper pencil because they're younger?
One of the things we're trying to do is modernize all of our systems and use technology, so less
How
pencil,
much
more
money
computer
is
type.
there in the line item of the 10-year plan for Exit 4A?
I'm sorry, Councilor.
How much money is in the line item for Exit 4A in the budget?
So our total budget for Exit 4A for all of the components, the design, the right-of-way acquisition, our own management of the project and construction, was around $94 million.
That's what we have in the 10-year plan?
Yes, for all of the aspects, to acquire the right-of-way, and for the design that's already been completed, as well as the construction. For construction
Sure.
itself, we only have budgeted $59 million.
Okay, so if it's $59 million that's in the 10-year plan, how much of this project could get done with the $59 million?
Again, we have to look more closely at our estimate compared to the bid to understand the bid discrepancy to be able to answer that question. I can't articulate that today.
Well, I know that the state's not a great proponent for bonding, but interest rates are so low that to get this project done, we ought to take a look at that. Because I know you've done some refinancing on some of the projects that have been done in the past, and there's money available.
I think council will look at every opportunity when it comes to how to fund this project, but we still believe that the price that we received was higher than what we should invest for this single location. We believe there's ways that we could mitigate risk and manage costs and do this project for a lower amount.
Thank you. I'll be asking you in 2 months. Or where you're at in 30 days versus that 2-month window.
I think we'll be able to share the path forward in 30 days.
Thank you.
Any further questions on any of these items from the Department of Transportation? Okay, seeing none, all in favor of items 13 through 22, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And Councilor Valinsky?
Aye.
Thank you very much, and the items are approved. I now ask for motion to adopt agenda item 23 from the Community Development Finance Authority.
So moved. Second.
So we have a motion and a second. Any discussion on item 23? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And Councilor Lewinsky?
Aye.
Thank you very much, and item 23 is approved. I now ask for motion to adopt agenda item 23A from the Office of Professional Licensure and Certification.
So moved.
Second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And Councilor Valinsky?
Aye.
Item 23A is approved. I now ask for a motion to adopt agenda item 24 from the Office of Strategic Initiatives.
So moved. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of item 24, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And Councilor Valinsky?
Aye.
Thank you very much, and with that, item 24 is approved. I now ask for a motion to adopt agenda item 25 from the New Hampshire Council on Developmental Disabilities.
So moved.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And Councilor Valinsky?
Aye.
And item 25 is approved. I now ask for a motion to adopt agenda items 26 and 27 from the Department of Business and Economic Affairs.
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? Councilor Cryans, with Commissioner Caswell joining us today. Good morning. Morning, Commissioner.
Good morning.
One thing, how are you?
Good morning.
I thought while you were here, because I saw you sitting in the back there, that you could talk to us today about sort of businesses, restaurants, hotels, where you see things. Because obviously, as you know more than probably most of us, that we just went through a very, very tough time and we're not out of it. So I thought it would be nice to get a sort of a view from your point of view.
Sure. And right now, in the broadest picture, the economic condition of the state is pretty good considering the circumstances that we're just coming out of the pandemic. Our unemployment rate continues to go down. All of the associated data related to that continues to be a bright spot. I think we're starting to see on a number of occasions the return of workforce and the access to workforce as one of the primary challenges for the state right now, as it has been prior to the COVID experience. I would say, however, that in the hospitality area, particularly in hotels and restaurants, we're seeing a cap, so to speak, in some respects as to how much continued business they can continue to draw given the circumstances. And I do think that one thing that's important to recognize is that a lot of this is now at the point of consumer behavior and consumer confidence. So this is where all of the work that's been done around the development of what I think is a well-balanced set of guidance documents and backfilling with a really well implemented and deployed set of business finance resources to assist businesses has walked a line that has put us in the position that we are right now, economically speaking. I would say, though, that from that consumer confidence issue, that has become probably as much of an issue as anything at this stage. Because we could, at this point, reopen everything available to everybody to come all at once and take advantage of all the businesses that New Hampshire has to offer, but I'm not sure that that would guarantee an increase in the number of people necessarily that would come. And that, in fact, that would probably harm the confidence that people have in the activity that they're currently engaged in. So that, I think, are some interesting components I'm seeing in terms of the balance that we're experiencing. But the last thing I would say, Councillor, is that throughout this whole process, we have continued to see a tremendous, almost constant level of business investment, expansion, and recruitment here into New Hampshire throughout the entire last couple of months. So we've got a number of projects on the docket right now and businesses that we are working with as we speak, as reading through some of the documents updated today, where that activity and those investments are continuing to be made. So there is a confidence on the investor and investment side that I think is perhaps maybe a little unique in the New England region, but very, very noteworthy, and I think definitely going to continue to help us from an economic standpoint weather this storm as we go forward.
Mr. Governor, one of the things that really concerns me is, I'll take the city of Lebanon. They were very creative in putting up tents so additional people could eat outdoors and everything. As you know, all of a sudden, many people who will not go inside to eat are not going to be able to eat outside. So I think we probably all know in some form or fashion that it's going to be very difficult for the restaurants going forward. And so it's just an observation. I'm sure you thought of that as well, but I won't go in the restaurant. I like eating outside. It's too cold to eat outside. And next thing you know, it's just the restaurants who are starting to do a little bit better are going to start turning their plenty
Yeah,
up.
possibly. If I can, I think we've made as many stipulations as we can safely, working with Dr. Chan and the Restaurant Association, for a lot of the partitions and things of that nature. And those are all going up now, and that's all in place. I tell everyone, take out, right? I mean, support your local restaurants. We're doing a thing where we're encouraging, it sounds weird, take out pancakes, because the diners have the hardest time doing takeout for breakfast. But it actually works really well, and it's great. So if you don't feel comfortable going in, whatever folks can do to keep helping support those local businesses, I think is really important. It's very hard to support a local hotel, right? Because you live in the area, right? There's no need there. But a restaurant is a lot easier. And so folks that do have those concerns, we just and most restaurants, I think, now have that can and have done so, have a pretty robust takeout model. So you order it online and all that sort of thing. So that hopefully that'll keep some of our numbers up. I think the latest revenue numbers for last month had meals and rooms down, I think, about 17% the plan, which is much better. I thought it would be down 40 or 50%, frankly, but it's only down 17. But to your point, it could actually get worse before it gets better. So we might have hit our high point there, and we can't assume too much more positivity. As Taylor said, we may have really capped out in those areas. But hopefully the remaining weekends of October will be good weather. We could definitely use the rain, but just Tuesday to Thursday, Saturday and Sunday, please. I'm talking to God, not to you, Council. But if you want to help with that too, that's fine. But if the weather holds up, hopefully we can have a strong October. But I think, I think consumer patterns are definitely going to change as we go forward.
I was struck the other day, I drove by a couple of hotels in the Upper Valley. You used to see the parking lots pretty full. And I'm not saying that it should be full, but you'd see them pretty full, or they'd have a conference going on. All of a sudden you go by and you see a big hotel with 6 cars in the parking lot.
Yeah.
And I was surprised when I heard the numbers coming back on on the revenue from the hotels, how high it was. I thought it would be decimated.
I think, Matt, to be honest, I've talked to some folks in Massachusetts and other states that are decimated. I mean, they're just done, and that's really sad. We don't want to see anyone be poorly, but we're definitely faring much, much better than other states. The only other thing I'll add is I know that the ski industry, I believe, is seeing a slight uptick in their preseason sales. We talked to Ski New Hampshire, who keeps track of some of that preseason data. It looks like the season pass sales are up a little bit over last year. So that's a sign that at least I think the local tourism, people are excited to keep the local tourism strong here in New Hampshire and doing their day trips out of Boston and whatever. I don't know if folks will be flying in from all over the country. But maybe they're not flying out of New England, for the winter season and not going to Colorado or Utah. They'll be having their ski experiences at home. So we'll see. It's all part of the weather and hopefully getting the mix. But again, we don't know what that'll mean for hotels. And I think by the end of the month, if I'm not mistaken, I think by the end of the month or mid-November, we'll have a better sense on hotel reservations for Christmas week, which is always a very good indicator of what's going to happen in the future. So, maybe we need to talk to the Hotel and Restaurant Association about trying to get some data, retailers department about where that is, so we can make some assumptions.
The final thing is the councilor that represents the northern part of the state. It is still very beautiful. People should, if they're planning a weekend, travel around. This is the weekend to do it because it is still very rough. I am surprised the number of people who live in New Hampshire who I think we took it for granted for so many years, said this year, this is the most beautiful year I've ever seen. I think we, as a society, have probably stepped back a little and enjoyed what was right in front of us.
The colors were good this year. I mean, they've been very good up north, to be sure.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Further discussion on any of these items from the Department of Business and Economic Affairs? Okay, hearing no further discussion. All in favor of items 26 and 27, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And the item, Councilor Valinsky? Sorry.
Aye.
And with that, the items are approved. I now ask for a motion to adopt agenda items 28, 29, and 30 from the Department of Natural and Cultural Resources.
So moved.
So we have a motion and a second. Any discussion on these three items?
Just a grammar edit on number 29, authorize the Bureau of Trials.
Bureau of Trials.
Yeah.
Uh-oh. That sounds ominous.
Right. Thank you.
We will make the spelling change. Okay, seeing no further discussion, all in favor of these items, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And Councilor Valinsky?
No on 28, yes on 29 and 30.
No. Thank you very much. Noting no on item 28, the items are approved. I now ask for a motion to adopt agenda items 31 through 35 from the Department of Environmental Services.
So moved. Seconded.
Any discussion? Okay, seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Councilor Valinsky?
Aye.
Thank you, and with that, the items are approved. I now ask for a motion on agenda item 35A from the New Hampshire Veterans Home, knowing that item 36 is not currently used. So just we have a motion
Second.
and a second. Any discussion on 35A? Yes, sir. Councilor Crime. Good morning, Commandant. How are you?
So the Commandant here, I thought I'd ask her to come up and just talk a little bit about the Veterans Home and how it's weathering the last 6 months.
Great, thank you for that question. Again, Margaret Lebrecht, Commandant of the New Hampshire Veterans Home for the record. We have been very fortunate, working closely with Health and Human Services and Public Health. We've fared actually with no COVID-19 in our residents whatsoever. And so, again, we're very thankful of that. Working closely with Public Health on outside visits to keep families, in some contact. They really have a hard time, though, talking through the mask. I will tell you that We are started buying the masks so that they can see the lips, so that our residents can read lips and things like that. But again, I think we're doing rather well. Our census numbers are down, because in March and April, we had stopped admitting with the really bad COVID times. In June, we started admitting residents back. But again, we have COVID tests. We follow public health guidelines to make sure we're isolating when the residents are admitted, the new residents, so that the population of the whole census is protected.
Margaret, what is your visitation policy?
Right now, we're again following public health. We're doing outside visits. We just barely transitioned into doing some inside visits. Again, we are thankful that we have the machines to clean the rooms before and after each one of those visits. We are still maintaining the 6-foot distance. They're gowned up, temperatures being taken, and they're going quite well, actually.
So with cold weather coming and outside visits will go away at some point, I'm assuming, you'll enhance the inside visit?
Yep, we have our town hall, which is quite large, if you remember, so we're able to do it there. We do have a couple of conference rooms spotted around the building and the closest to the outside door areas, so people are able to come in but not go through the residential areas and look at all.
Thank you.
So we're, again, working as best we can to keep our residents and our families healthy and happy.
That's great. Any further questions? Thanks, Peggy. With that, all in favor of item 35A, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And Councilor Belinsky?
Aye.
With that, the item is approved. I now ask for a motion to approve agenda item 37 from the Department of Justice.
So moved.
Second.
A motion and second. Any discussion or questions for the Attorney General?
Question, Governor?
Sure. I think the Attorney General's here.
Morning, Councilor.
Good morning. I don't think that microphone works, but how
about this?
Good morning. Good morning, Mr. Attorney General. How are you? Go ahead, Councilor Belinsky.
Thanks, Governor. Good morning, Mr. McDonald. I wonder if you could give us an update on the use of force analysis in the arrest of Mr. St. Preux on Memorial Day weekend in Albany.
Our report and supporting materials will be released tomorrow.
Okay. Will you email that to the councilors?
Absolutely, yes.
Great. Thanks.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Okay, thank you. Well, seeing none, all in favor of item 37, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item 37 is approved. I now ask for motion to adopt agenda items 38 through 42 for the Department of Administrative Services.
Move.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And Councilor Belinsky?
Aye.
Thank you very much, and with that, those items are approved. There are some informational items that have been provided, as we have normally done through the course of the COVID pandemic. If anyone has any questions, or you can follow up directly with us, or even any of the commissioners or departments directly, or even Taylor Caswell, let it go. Commissioner Pignatelli, Councilor Pignatelli, sorry.
Oh, I like Commissioner. As I do at every meeting, I am objecting to your spending this money without the advice and consent of the council.
Okay. Councilor Preston.
Yes, I just would like to thank Commissioner Sheehan for being on top of having a great deal of knowledge on the contracts of D, E, and F, which were for our budget, and how vitally important this monies would go to them in a timely manner. You know, I understand the objection to a little less oversight. However, I go right into these contracts making sure that, the money that people have concern about that's being spent by our federal government, they want oversight. And they want to know that when a company does receive the money, there is a really, really important reason why. And when I called Commissioner Sheehan, she knew everything about these contracts that I had questions about, and really gave me the great comfort knowing that I went through the Gopher process, and also personal accounts of how difficult the businesses, what difficult time businesses were going through. And having that information and understanding that it helped me, with my concerns about West Summerside, of course. But, Governor, you brought it to us in informational form, and I'm able to review them. I'm able to double-check everything, and I felt confident that I should mention that today.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Ryan?
Probably several months ago, I brought up the whole dilemma with some of the hospitals, and my district happens to have roughly, I think, 13 of the 30 hospitals. We have the very largest DHMC, but we also have other small hospitals, and we have the smallest hospital. So having given you all that, which I know you're aware of, is the role the hospitals play in the community. Many times you're the largest employer, some of the best paychecks come out of the hospitals, keep the communities going, and the vitality of the hospital is so crucial. My concern is just sort of a general observation is that the bleeding that they've been doing, they use that term to talk about hospitals, but financial bleeding they're doing is, I'm concerned, is it going to only either stay at the level or even get worse as time progresses, because some of the losses are huge. And DHMC obviously can weather it better than some of these real tiny hospitals. And that's what's concerning me. Will we see either the crippling or the demise of a small hospital? So I'm just putting it out there so people are aware, because when I brought it up last time, I had people come up to me and say, geez, I don't see how the hospitals aren't doing well. They've got this major pandemic going. They should be doing very well. And I said, well, you take away the non-essential services or some of the elective surgeries, all of those go away. Half your income goes away, and yet you don't lay off half your employees. So having said all that, Governor, I'm just throwing that out there. Maybe not so much even for us, but for people listening, that your hospitals are some of them very tenuous situations.
Sure. Sure. Well, I'll respond to that a little bit. I think it's a great point. The first fund we created was for the hospital relief fund, right? Because we want to make sure that no one had shut doors, whether the hospitals or even just local access providers. And then we've increased the funds there substantially over time. So about a week, the data I'm going to give right now, I'm doing off the top of my head, and it's about a week old. But if you looked at all the hospitals together, and to your point, the hospitals are very different, right? We have some larger hospitals like Catholic Medical, Elliott, Dartmouth Hitchcock, and then you have more of your critical access hospitals, and I think we have maybe 13 or so critical access hospitals thereabouts. More of the rural, smaller and rural, what we call rural hospitals. In aggregate, if you put all those hospitals together, as about a week ago, if you looked at last year versus this year, last year they had expected to do, or they would have done $3.6 billion. I'm rounding that a little bit in business. They were down about $500 million in expected revenues. I'm sorry, those are the costs. Those aren't revenues, those are costs. So they had about a total of $3.6 billion of costs for this year. They were down about $500 million in revenue, which is pretty substantial. When you added back in the federal support and the state support that has come, they were down, the net negative was about $187 million, about 5% on the whole. When you separated the hospitals out and you looked at kind of the larger hospitals versus rural access, and again, you account for the grants and the funds that have come back in. Believe it or not, at least to date, the rural access hospitals are in the black by about $13 million. The problem that we have is that going forward, I mean, that's with a lot of state and federal support, we have to make sure that support's still there, because they are going to continue to have some challenges, to be sure. About 30% of the federal grants available to hospitals, I believe, are still available from the original CARES Act bill. So they spent about 70% of it, and that totals somewhere in the realm nationally, 30 billion, approximately, I'm ballparking that, about $30 billion still available nationally for hospitals. Now, every time they roll out funds, they kind of roll out a different formula. So early on, they did a great rural access fund, and that's why a lot of our rural hospitals, Dartmouth-Hitchcock being one of them. I mean, Dartmouth-Hitchcock's received close to $75 million in federal money so far. It's quite unbelievable. Not so much for Cottage or Spear or some of the other smaller guys. So there are more funds. There's a lot of funds that have been doled out, more funds to come. I don't know what the formula is. I've advocated very strongly to Secretary Azar and the Department of Health and Human Services that they have to make sure that the dollars are granted commensurate with the problem, right? Not just based on arbitrary formulas, but really where COVID has hit these hospitals the most, where some of the highest COVID expenditures are, and where some of these hospitals are mostly in the red. When we did a deeper dive, over 60 or 70% of that 187 million that they're in the red, about 60 or 70% of it is really due to two hospitals, two of the larger hospitals in the southern tier. But there are some very significant losses, and hospitals don't live on very high margins. Right? In aggregate, they make a lot of money, but that's because there's so much volume. But the margins are typically very, very thin, so they don't have a whole lot of flexibility to play with. So between what the state has and will continue to provide, and hopefully what the feds continue to provide, it will keep that gap either 5% down. It's not like it's it's as bad as some industries, but it's still a very thin margin in an industry you can't afford to lose at all, frankly. Especially New Hampshire. So again, we're hopeful that the new formulas that come out of the federal government will be commensurate with where the impacts have been the greatest. The state still has some money available to it. I think, looking at John, I think we want to, the last time we did hospital funds, I want to say we had 7 or 8 hospitals, 7 hospitals apply. Is that about right? Maybe 7 hospitals actually qualified for funds because they were integrated.
Yeah, it was only 5 who qualified.
5 hospitals actually
There were
qualified.
5 or 6 who
Yeah.
didn't have losses.
Yeah. So 5. So about of the 10 or so that applied, only 5 or 6 actually had net losses that we usually give some money to. And again, we'll do it again. I mean, we'll make sure that door stays open. Councilor.
Yeah, we're on the informational items. I have really never, ever thanked the Secretary of State's office for all the information that I get every time on Friday before the meeting. And I think it's appropriate that I should say, please tell everybody in your office that I really, really appreciate the Secretary of State putting together these packages for me. It makes me able to do my job so much easier. Thank you.
Councilor Pignatelli, you have a question?
Yeah, thank you for that update about the hospitals. I would like to see a list of every hospital, how much money they have lost, and how much money they have been given, or in grants, or other ways that they're providing money. Do you think that that's
We can
available?
definitely show you all the hospitals that have gotten the state grants. I don't know if we can identify the individual hospitals that have gotten the federal grants, because that comes directly from the feds. And on the losses, I would have to ask, that's not something we have access to, but I only see it in aggregate. But Steve Anand, who represents the Hospital Association, may have that data. I don't know if that's something that they would share.
Can you get me his name again and phone number?
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we can definitely show, and what we'll do is we'll provide, if it's not already in this package, maybe it is or isn't, a list of all the, not just hospitals, but also the hundreds and hundreds of other physicians, dentists, everyone who's received money out of the healthcare relief fund. I think we can do that. Right? We'll make sure everyone has a copy of that as well. In that, if we could just maybe in the format, John, if we could just put like hospitals on top or on a separate sheet, and then we'll put all the other healthcare providers, because they've gotten checked. And if you want the long-term care facilities, it's a similar issue. They're not hospitals, but we'll include those as well, so you can see what long-term care facilities in each of your districts have also received funds. There's been 5 rounds of that funding, if I'm not mistaken. Is that right, John?
For long-term care.
3 on long-term care.
Actually, there's 2 for long-term care.
Yeah, 2 on long-term care, but 3 on the hospitals and
Yeah.
healthcare relief.
So 5.
So 5 total.
Yeah.
My lawyer's got to catch up. Okay. All right, with that, we'll conclude the meeting, and we'll see everyone in a couple weeks. Thank you very much.